Hi everybody, I'm Linda Pacini, Director of Training and Education for Baby Lock, and today I have a special guest that I want to introduce to all of you on our Palette Facebook user group, and this is Christine Millar. Christine, welcome to Baby Lock Studios.
Thank you so much, Linda, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So we've been wanting to have you here for a while because what you don't know, and I know, is that Christine has developed for us a fantastic series about digitizing. And Christine, before we start talking about the beautiful digitizing that you're going to be teaching everybody, let's find out a little bit more about you. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I have a beautiful 18-month-old boy. He's just learning new stuff every day, and it's really exciting and saying new things. I'm really lucky that my husband gave up his career, and he's now willing to work full-time as a primary parent for my son. And he's been so wonderful and so essential because I actually do work 60 to 80 hours a week still.
60 to 80 hours a week. What do you do for a living?
So I'm a physician anesthesiologist. I put people to sleep for a living, and I really love it because there's a whole variety that I do. I work in the operating room, making sure that people are asleep and comfortable for surgery. I work in the ICU to help with procedures when they need it. I also work on labor and delivery, placing epidurals for women when they're giving birth, and I especially love that part because you get to take away people's pain.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, 5 births, definitely you were my favorite person in the room, no doubt. Well, that's fantastic. So I know that you were involved in making masks and kind of doing a little bit of research and helping some doctors out. So tell us a little bit about that.
So during the whole COVID crisis, especially when it first started, before everybody was recommended to wear masks by the CDC, we ran into a situation in New York City where basically they ran out of masks completely. And at that point, the question was, how can we make a mask that could potentially kind of work even as a partial N95 for these physicians, especially with materials they may have on hand at a hospital. So at that point, I joined up with a local university and I started sewing masks for them, and they reached out to me because I have a reputation sort of as the sewing doctor. And I started sewing up masks, and we started testing them to try to pass the OSHA fit test, which is what you need for a mask to really work as a respirator. And we actually managed to get several designs that passed, which was really exciting. And I really wanted to share that fact with a lot of other doctors all around the world who may be having the same issue. So I did make a YouTube video, and I was completely shocked when it went like quasi-viral and got 1 million views. But,
that's fantastic. And I was kind of like, scoping you out, and I saw your video, and I was really impressed because what really struck me is your incredible attention to detail. And I suspect that it didn't just stop with masks. I know for a fact that you really are quite an accomplished sewer. So tell us a little bit about sewing and where your sewing journey started.
So ever since I was young, I really wanted to become the first plastic surgeon, fashion designer, illustrator, and novelist. And
me too.
Don't we all? And I really didn't want to let any of it go. So all through undergrad and medical school and even residency, I kept sewing. I just did a little bit every single day, and I kept on going at it. And initially I started with cosplay and making costumes for different conventions, New York Comic Con, where I won Babe of Comic Con in 2009.
That's amazing.
Thank you. But Princess Leia just wins on her own.
Oh, she does. Okay. I should know this. I watch the Comic-Con stuff. I see all the costuming, and I know that there's incredible attention to detail, and it really is like you're fabricating something out of nothing, right? And people use unusual materials and everything. So after the whole Comic-Con thing, where did your journey take you then?
So I realized in doing all this that my favorite part was actually the historical costumes. And in particular, the dresses that they make for period films really got to me, and those were the ones I found myself going back to over and over again. I made the Sleepy Hollow black and white striped dress 3 times now, trying to get it just right, which I still haven't. And from there, I just kind of ditched all the other things and just really focused on historical, with the occasional costume for a small child who wants one.
Okay, so what's your favorite era?
My favorite era to sew is actually the 1740s to the 1780s, and it's the silhouette, it's the embroidery, and I just love everything about it. This is a dress from 1789. It's from the Palais Galliera, and I really like it because the embroidery is very naturalistic. If you look, it's all about the flowers, it's about the grapes, the fruits, and they do their best to try to capture nature, and it was really, really in vogue to do that. So that's one of the reasons I love it so much, because that embroidery to me is just, it's my favorite, you know? And so it's also my favorite to wear because of the shapes. I also really love the 1880s. What I'm wearing here is an 1887 walking dress. So this is like daily wear that women would just go out to walk in. And believe it or not, this stripe is also historically accurate. They loved bold stripes. So you see all these black and white stripes, which is really fun to me because I love Beetlejuice and Tim Burton is like my favorite. So I made this dress out of cotton, and I really like it because the silhouette, it's held up with steel bones in the back, which actually are very malleable, so I can sit and run and do whatever I want to do. So I do this as well. I also love Edwardian. This is an 1899 to 1902 dress. The original was worn by Hector Guimard's wife, who you may know as the guy who invented the metro signs in Paris. So he made this for his wife for their wedding, and he designed it for her rather, and it was embroidered by a company called Calais Soya, who also, God, I'm probably butchering that, but they did a beautiful job soutashing it, and I wanted that skirt so much that I actually managed to get some pictures of the back. Thank you, Palais Galliera, for sending me those. So, and then I actually made a muslin of the skirt, and I drew the pattern on by hand, scanned in each piece, and then digitized and embroidered it in about, I want to say 40 to 50 panels throughout the whole thing. And it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And about a year after, I realized I really wanted a bodice. So I made the bodice. The bodice is of my own design, but with the same principles as other tops from the period. So I really like this era because it's so feminine. It's the classic, you know, classic Gibson girl. It's such a romantic period. And on top of that, I also love the Jane Austen era. Speaking of romanticism, the woman who really invented the romantic novel.
Christine, I'm a believer.
Regency I really like because they have that same naturalistic love of flowers and everything, but on the other hand, they also branch out. So I love it as well because there's a lot of activity and parties and festivals. Like the Jane Austen Festival of Louisville is every single year, and it's only 4 hours away from where I live. So my husband and I go every year.
Yeah, you know what? I have to be honest with you. You make me want to do this.
Please do. Okay. And that's like the biggest compliment to me because I really think that it's a really wonderful and easy to get into, especially if you start out with something like this, like Regency. I like it because I'm wearing the proper corsetry and all the different petticoats and everything like you saw. But really, if you just want to get into it and just wear a balconette bra, you can totally do it and have it still look really good.
Well, it's amazing, and I love all the embroidery and the details. So let's talk a little bit about your jacket. It's a single color. It's a beautiful embroidery, and I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, I have never run across embroidery designs like that.
Oh, thank you so much. I digitized this myself. It's based off of an actual jacket in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And the original was done in rouleau and soutache, which is, getting a thick piece of fabric or ribbon and kind of curling it to make the designs. But I don't have the patience for that. Okay. So what I did is I did a faux tache where I really embroidered about the same color onto it so it gives the same effect. Nice. So that's what I did there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you digitized that yourself, and that's really why you're here and why we're having this conversation and we're talking to everybody is because we have a special treat, and that is that you are going to embark on a journey of being able to share everything that you've learned about embroidery with all of our Baby Lock palette users. And I'm thrilled about this because I know that there's so much about what you do that can be applied to any type of embroidery, regardless of what somebody's doing. And so let's talk a little bit, before we go into the specifics of the program, let's talk a little bit about the embroidery on your dress itself.
So the embroidery on my dress right here, this is one that was based on one in the V&A Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And it was originally embroidered for a little 5-year-old girl. And it's a beautiful, adorable little dress, and I wanted it for me. So when I was about 3 months pregnant, what I did is I actually started drawing this, and I made it explicitly for my machine. There's exactly 10 colors on here, and there are 10 needles on my machine, and so I could do 10 colors really comfortably without having to change the colors too frequently. So for this, I digitized the design, and it's designed with each flower being embroidered at a time, so each region is done separately because the placement of every single piece is so important. And if you've done any machine embroidery, you know that designs can shift and move over time. So if you do each flower at a time, everything is placed together and neatly. So actually, if you look at the pattern pieces, it's 112 color changes, but it's really only one machine setup.
Right, that's wonderful. So what's exciting to know is that Christine is a very good digitizer, but you also understand Baby Lock products and embroidery. A 10-needle embroidery machine certainly gives you an awful lot of efficiencies when it comes to sewing. But I also want to point out that regardless of whether or not florals and nature elements like you digitize, whether or not that's something that you are interested in doing, I can tell you that the principles of embroidery and digitizing remain exactly the same. And so you're going to share with us the way that you do it. And so for most people, if you haven't embarked on digitizing yet, I just want to have you talk a little bit about the process itself. And is it just, you digitize it and it's that perfect once around?
Oh, I wish. Completely honestly, something like this, I will digitize, I stitch it out, I edit it based on what actually comes out, because what actually comes out is very different. And in my lessons, I also talk about different allowances you have to make while you digitize, because things shift in a certain rhythmic way. So once you understand those patterns, you can kind of digitize for that. But I also encourage everyone, it's one thing to know how these things shift, it's another thing to stitch it out and actually see it. So very much so, I encourage everyone to digitize a little, stitch it out. Digitize a little, stitch it out.
That's perfect. And so if you are wanting to learn how to digitize and you'd like to get as good as Christine, join her for a series that we're going to be launching right here on this site. And in that series, what you're going to find is that Christine is very generously giving you the files that she actually finished with so you can check your results against hers. It's a progressive lesson and it's in a series. And we're even going to talk a little bit about artwork in the very first lesson, talking to you about how you find artwork, how Christine finds her artwork. So we're excited about it. So look for Christine and learn how to digitize. And this is Baby Lock's gift to you. Christine, thank you very much for sharing your talent with us and certainly all of your beautiful garments. And I got a feeling there's going to be a lot more of us wearing historical garments pretty soon. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.